which is where do you see AI going in the short term, which I think you defined as the next year or two?
Things have changed so fast. I feel like every 6 months I need to sort of give a new speech on what's going to happen.
The interview was posted on Stanford's YouTube channel, but after a few days, it was removed from YouTube and everywhere else. I finally managed to find the video. So let's watch it and break down some of the key moments.
In the next year, you're going to see very large context windows, agents, and text to action. When they are delivered at scale, it's going to have an impact on the world at a scale that no one understands yet. Much bigger than the horrific impact we've had by social media.
Here are some of the points Schmidt mentioned during the talk. Google's losing in AI because it cares too much about work-life balance. Schmidt's saying, if your team's only showing up 1 day a week, how are you going to beat OpenAI or Anthropic? Take a look.
You were at Google for a long time, and they invented the transformer architecture.
Peter. It's all Peter's fault.
Thanks to brilliant people over there like Peter and Jeff Dean and everyone. But now it doesn't seem like they've kind of lost the initiative to OpenAI, and even the last leaderboard I saw, Anthropic's Claude was at the top of the list. I asked Sundar this. He didn't really give me a very sharp answer. Maybe you have a sharper or a more objective explanation for what's going on there.
I'm no longer a Google employee.
Yes.
In the spirit of full disclosure, Google decided that work-life balance and going home early and working from home was more important than winning. And the reason startups work is because the people work like hell. And I'm sorry to be so blunt, but the fact of the matter is if you all leave the university and go found a company, you're not going to let people work from home and only come in 1 day a week if you want to compete against the other startups.
When in the early days of Google, Microsoft was like that.
Exactly.
But now it seems to be...
And there's a long history of, in my industry, our industry, I guess, of companies winning in a genuinely creative way and really dominating a space and not making the next transition. It's very well documented. And I think that the truth is founders are special. The founders need to be in charge. The founders are difficult to work with. They push people hard.
Schmidt got into a lot of trouble for that statement. Anyway, Schmidt says he's got a lot of respect for Elon Musk and TSMC, Taiwan Semiconductor Manufacturing Company, because they push their employees hard. According to Schmidt, you need to keep the pressure on to win. TSMC even makes physics PhDs work on factory floors in their first year. Can you imagine American PhDs doing that?
Are difficult to work with. They push people hard. As much as we can dislike Elon's personal behavior, look at what he gets out of people. I had dinner with him, and he was flying. I was in Montana. He was flying that night at 10 p.m. to have a meeting at midnight with X.AI. Right? Think about it. I was in Taiwan, different country, different culture, and they said that, and this is TSMC, who I'm very impressed with, and they have a rule that the starting PhDs coming out of they're good physicists, work in the factory on the basement floor. Now, can you imagine getting American physicists to do that? The PhDs? Highly unlikely. Different work ethic. And the problem here, the reason I'm being so harsh about work is that these are systems which have network effects. So time matters a lot. And in most businesses, time doesn't matter that much, right? You have lots of time,
Eric also says, OpenAI's Stargate might cost way more than expected. Think $300 billion, not $100 billion. Schmidt suggested the US either get cozy with Canada for their hydropower and cheap labor, or buddy up with Arab nations for funding.
And everybody else appears to me to be getting larger. 6 months ago, I was convinced that the gap was getting smaller. So I invested lots of money in the little companies. Now I'm not so sure. And I'm talking to the big companies, and the big companies are telling me that they need 10 billion, 20 billion, 50 billion, 100 billion.
Stargate is 100 billion, right?
They're very, very hard. Sam Altman is a close friend. He believes that it's going to take about 300 billion, maybe more. I pointed out to him that I'd done the calculation on the amount of energy required, and I then, in the spirit of full disclosure, went to the White House on Friday and told them that we need to become best friends with Canada, because Canada has really nice people, helped invent AI, and lots of hydropower. Because we as a country do not have enough power to do this. The alternative is to have the Arabs fund it. And I like the Arabs personally. I spent lots of time there, right? But they're not going to adhere to our national security rules, whereas Canada and the US are part of a triumvirate where we all agree on.
So these $100 billion, $300 billion data centers, electricity starts becoming the scarce resource.
And by the way, if you follow this line of reasoning, why did I discuss CUDA and NVIDIA? If $300 billion is all going to go to NVIDIA, you know what to do in the stock market. Okay. That's not a stock recommendation. I'm not a licensed.
With that said, Schmidt thinks it's a lost cause for tech innovation. This is what he has to say about countries with this AI innovation, with Brussels killing opportunities left and right. He sees a bit of hope in France, but not much elsewhere. He's also convinced the US has lost China, and that India is now the most important ally.
The most interesting country is India, because the top AI people come from India to the US, and we should let India keep some of its top talent. Not all of them, but some of them. And they don't have the kind of training facilities and programs that we so richly have here. To me, India is the big swing state in that regard. China's lost. It's not going to come back. They're not going to change the regime as much as people wish them to do. Japan and Korea are clearly in our camp. Taiwan is a fantastic country whose software is terrible. So that's not going to work. Amazing hardware. And in the rest of the world, there are not a lot of other good choices that are big. Europe is screwed up because of Brussels. It's not a new fact. I spent 10 years fighting them. And I worked really hard to get them to fix the EU Act. And they still have all the restrictions that make it very difficult to do our kind of research in Europe. My French friends have spent all their time battling Brussels, and Macron, who's a personal friend, is fighting hard for this. And so France, I think, has a chance. I don't see Germany coming, and the rest is not big enough.
That's interesting. Also, according to Schmidt, will make the rich richer and the poor poorer. It's a game for strong countries, and those without the resources might be left behind. After Schmidt left the interview, it was Q&A time, and there was a question about manufacturing jobs, and the response was, don't expect AI chips to bring back manufacturing jobs. Factories are mostly automated now, and people are too slow and dirty to compete. Apple moving its MacBook production to Texas isn't about cheap labor. It's about not needing much labor at all. Have a listen.
Manufacturing.
I was surprised about that.
Yeah, and I think what was interesting, like to me as like a labor economist, is that it was really like a green flag I've seen in like literature and news that, okay, if we're onshoring all of this chip manufacturing, isn't that going to create some sort of resurgence in blue collar jobs? And I wondered if you had any thoughts about intelligent robotic models or human labor.
Well, I don't think it's going to be much of a, I mean, how many of you guys have visited a chip fab? Anybody? You guys, a few of you have. How many workers were in that fab?
I was at TSMC,
Yeah.
like you go in, so I don't know.
Yeah, I mean, well, okay, so the answer is zero. Like, the reason they don't let anyone go in because we humans are too like clumsy and dirty and like, we can't, so it's all robotic. It's sealed inside. So there is like work to, bring stuff to them, etc. And if a robot like falls over or something goes wrong, they have to put on, you've probably seen these like, they look like spacesuits. They have to go in and then they kind of maybe adjust something and then they go back out and hope they didn't break anything. So it's basically lights out. Yeah, I don't think it's, there is some like more sophisticated labor required that I don't think it's like a blue collar research. In fact, one of the reasons that Apple reshored MacBook production to Texas is not because labor is so cheap in Texas or anything. It's that they don't actually require a whole lot of labor anymore. So it's a pretty labor, I think. U.S. manufacturing is surging in terms of output, but in terms of employment, it's not really growing all that much. Yeah.
Schmidt threw in a cheeky comment about TikTok, saying if you're starting a business, go ahead and steal whatever you can, like music.
Is text to action. So I'll give you an example. the government is in the process of trying to ban TikTok. We'll see if that actually happens. If TikTok is banned, here's what I propose each and every one of you do. Say to your LLM the following. Make me a copy of TikTok, steal all the users, steal all the music, put my preferences in it, produce this program in the next 30 seconds, release it, and in 1 hour, if it's not viral, do something different along the same lines. That's the command. Boom, 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 right? You understand how powerful that is. If you can go from arbitrary language to arbitrary digital command, which is essentially what Python in this scenario is, imagine that each and every human on the planet has their own programmer that actually does what they want, as opposed to the programmers that work for me who don't do what I ask.
Those were the key highlights from the interview. With that, we're wrapping up today's video. Thank you for watching.